Welcome to Crossroads. President Trump and Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping, well, they just met, and signs are actually pointing to the United States moving to the great decoupling we've all been waiting for from the Chinese Communist Party, despite talks of a deal being made. Now, there's a lot to this because you might have heard the opposite, right? Trump just made a deal with Xi. Not quite. I'll be giving my take on what the meeting really means, what the deal actually signifies. And on the topic also of the Trump-Xi meeting, well, the Chinese Communist Party is also saying it's going to do more to help reduce these shipments of fentanyl, which come from China. But this is just another example of what we call the CCP method at play, which I'll explain. And also, meanwhile, Trump is suggesting a possible U.S. intervention in Nigeria where a genocide of Christians is taking place. And Trump suggesting, well, not on his watch. Now, there's a lot more happening in the world right now, so let's jump into it. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment below the video, and let's jump into it. Now, first of all, the United States is moving towards the great decoupling we've long been talking about from the Chinese Communist Party. And this actually came to the forefront during a key meeting between President Trump and CCP leader Xi Jinping. And while they were able to make a deal, which you probably all heard about a little bit now, the broader picture suggests something else. The two countries are moving further apart. Now, Fox News said this. It said, President Donald Trump spent the week in Asia meeting with other global leaders, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, unelected president, but president apparently, while his administration ramped up its attacks against alleged drug boats in Latin America. You know, it said Trump met with Xi Thursday in South Korea, where the two hashed out a series of agreements concerning trade, and specifically, Trump said he agreed to cut tariffs on Chinese imports by 10%, which means actually still pretty dang high tariffs. It reduced it from 57% to 47%. But I note that's because China said it would cooperate with the U.S. on addressing the fentanyl crisis. So 10% cut if the CCP addresses fentanyl. I'll just tell you right now that's not going to happen. They're just going to ship something just like fentanyl. I'll talk about it in a bit, but that's how the method works, right? But also, additionally, Trump said that he would not move forward with imposing an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods that were expected to kick in Saturday. And notes that Trump threatened this steep hike after China announced in October it would impose export controls on rare earth magnets, which he said China had agreed to postpone by a year. Afterward, Trump described the meeting as a massive success and signaled that a broader trade deal between the two countries would be signed shortly. Now, look, there's a lot to talk about in terms of what might be in a future trade deal, but let's talk about things currently at, because we don't really know what that's going to look like if it even happens. But what has currently happened, what just took place, it looks more like an agreement on terms for a trade war, not an actual end to a conflict. It looks like they're getting ready for battle, and they say, okay, we won't use this if you don't use that. We're not going to use shotguns if you don't use gas, right? That's kind of the agreement here in the trade war. What they did is they basically agreed on the more destructive parts of their trade weapons. China's not going to do the whole, exporting fentanyl to the U.S. They probably will still. I'll explain in a sec. And the U.S. is not going to hit them with an additional 10% tariffs because of that one thing, but they're keeping a lot of other tariffs in place. The trajectory, though, and this is what really matters, the trajectory, where things are heading, still remains that this is a move towards decoupling. 47% tariffs are still going to basically make it non-profitable for companies to manufacture in the U.S. and ship to the U.S. This still represents the pulling out, in other words, of factories from China to somewhere else. Probably the United States, because a lot of countries got some degree of tariffs. America's, of course, the largest purchaser. They need to sell to America. It doesn't help them to send somewhere else. They need to have it again sent here. This means factories are going to be leaving China regardless of this. The big picture here is the United States is trying to break dependence on the CCP for manufacturing. Again, bringing the factories back, but especially with rare earth elements. And so for the CCP on their side, they're saying we're going to restrict the rare earth elements. you're not going to be able to build what you need, even if you move it away. You're not going to be able to build the computers. You're not going to be able to build your chips. You're not going to be able to build your cell phones. You're not even going to be able to build the chips you need for your missiles because we control them, and that's the whole narrative. So what they agreed to is this. Okay, look, we will not decimate your economy. We're not going to hit you with 100% tariffs, which is what Trump was threatening, right? An additional 100%, which would have been 157%. That's a death sentence to the Chinese economy right now. But what they agreed to was kind of a middle ground that will eventually help facilitate a peaceful transition, quote unquote, towards a decoupling. The trajectory is still that. And what does decoupling mean in this sense? It means the moving away from American dependence on Chinese manufacturing. That is the context of decoupling here. Now, look, on the point of the CCP saying it's going to do more to help reduce the shipments of fentanyl, though, there's this. I would say this is just another example of what we call the CCP method at play. What is the CCP method? It means they'll sign any agreement, violate it immediately, literally before the ink dries. They're going to violate it. And what does that mean? Well, it means it's going to be violated instantly. America's going to say, well, they're taking a bit of time to comply, right? Oh, compliance is an issue. And then after they see they're not complying, then they keep making promises. Then it goes into, okay, we're going to fix all of it. Then it goes into, gee, it looks like you never fixed it. Then it goes into the auditing process, if they ever get there, which they typically don't. Goes into the auditing process. Then they say, gee, you're in violation of this. China will, of course, then punish like one company or maybe one guy at one company. Oh, this corrupt official who was the CEO of this company is going to get purged, and they'll keep violating it. And before you know it, you have a new president in place, and the new president has to restart the entire process, right? Complaining, auditing, getting lied to, minor figure gets purged. CCP says they fix it, another 4 years, same process repeats itself. That's the CCP model, right? That's the method they use for trade deals. They will just violate it. They do it every time. And ironically, the people who've been victim of this over and over and over and over again never take a lesson from it. Sometimes they're bribed and bought off. Maybe that's the reason. But sometimes it's just that they believe what they say. Oh, looks like it's broken. We'll fix it. Hey, you never fixed it. Yes, we did. No, you didn't. You never fixed it. You're right. Let me fire this guy. Now it's fixed. No, you never fixed it. And the process just repeats itself. That's how the CCP method works. And that's what they're already doing. Look, even in the case where the communist regime in China does help stem the flow of fentanyl, let's say they do it, right? The market is moving towards newer and even worse drugs, also coming out of China. And so they can say, hey, gee, we fixed the fentanyl problem. Here's an even worse drug. Try to regulate that. 10 years down the line, maybe they'll do it. Washington Free Beacon says this. It says an even more potent replacement for fentanyl is emerging in the United States, and experts say China is behind its rise. It notes that Nizanes, a class of synthetic opioids, can be up to 43 times stronger than fentanyl. That's pretty dang powerful. It notes it was first developed in the 1950s as a painkiller, but the extreme addictiveness led drug makers to keep them off the shelves. Something worse than fentanyl. It notes that now their black market presence is increasing. Black market in the U.S. open to China, but only for export. It notes the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, logged 0 reported nitanzine discoveries from 2005 to 2019. Since then, the agency has logged nearly 7,000 such reports and linked the drugs to roughly 2,000 deaths. That's a drop in the bucket compared to last year's 48,000 fentanyl-related deaths. It's also an alarmingly rise, drug experts say, and likely to undercount because they might not even test it properly. It notes further in that much like fentanyl replaced heroin over the last decade amid a government crackdown on the latter drug, experts fear that nitazines could become smugglers' new synthetic opioid of choice as the federal government focuses on fentanyl. In other words, China, stop sending fentanyl. Okay, we'll send you this one that's 47 times worse. How about that? And notes that's especially dangerous for these several reasons. Extreme potency of these means that users may need multiple hits of Narcan to reverse overdoses. Police often don't carry that many cans of Narcan with them. Narcan, again, someone's dying of fentanyl overdose, hit them with Narcan. It's like a zombie waking up from the dead. It's like surreal, actually. They go from like being blue and suffocating and dead, hit them with Narcan, and it's like they just like sit up like Count Dracula, and they're like totally normal. If they have to do it like this where they need multiple shots of it, police don't always carry that. They're not going to carry enough to save people's lives, so people are going to die. You know, it's a standard test don't detect the drug in victims, making it difficult to understand the prevalence, making you wonder too if there's more than 7,000 deaths. And notice that since the drug's emergence on the illicit market is a new phenomenon, experts don't know as much about them. So what's going to happen in the meantime? You're going to have a lot of drug overdoses that can't really be detected, and police are not going to be able to save their lives. Not easy to start carrying, unless you start carrying a lot more Narcan, and that costs a lot of money also, by the way. Now, look, also on that point, there are global issues, back to the trade deal. Behind all these current looming wars, the Chinese Communist Party is playing a key role against the United States. And this is also kind of the hidden hand of the CCP operating internationally. We'll be talking more about this whole war after we come back from a quick break.
All right, just to pause here for a super quick moment. You are, of course, watching Crossroads with Joshua Philipp. I'm just here to share a message about American Hartford Gold, my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Now, obviously, the recent tariffs have made the markets super turbulent and volatile. With every new piece of tariff news, the markets seem to either crash up or crash down. And of course, it's worth mentioning that these conditions don't only affect Wall Street. They affect all of us through our investments and our retirement accounts. That's why I'd like to introduce you to a company that I trust and I myself use to secure my own savings, American Hartford Gold. They specialize in helping Americans move our assets into something tangible, into something you can actually hold, which is physical gold and physical silver, two precious metals that act as a hedge against all those decisions being made in Washington, D.C. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They have thousands of 5-star reviews, and they make the whole buying process super simple. Your metals can be shipped directly to your door, or you can transfer your current retirement account to a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And the best part is that right now, American Hartford Gold is offering an exclusive offer. When you call them today and you mention the name Joshua, you could receive up to $15,000 in free silver with your initial investment. Take advantage of their special offer. You can either just call them at 877-260-2764 or text Joshua to 65532. All their information will also be down in the description box below. And now, back to Crossroads.
Welcome back. Now, there are a lot of issues right now happening all around the world. And behind most of the looming wars, which we're looking down the barrel of right now, the Chinese Communist Party is playing a key role, puppeteering it all, really against the United States. And this holds true for Russia, where, again, the CCP has been named the key enabler of its war. This is about Hamas and Iran, where the Chinese Communist Party is the main backer of Iran, and the Chinese Communist Party has worked to maintain Hamas's power in Gaza, actually meeting with both Palestinian Authority, Hamas, Hezbollah even, trying to keep the war going, and also around something else that could very soon and very easily turn into another war, a very large one, and that's Venezuela. Now, on the point of Venezuela, if you look at what most media is talking about, well, they're saying the United States could soon be engaged in a broader conflict, and the regime there in Venezuela is calling for the Chinese Communist Party to come and help them out against the United States. The Washington Post said this. It says, amid a buildup of American forces in the Caribbean, Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro is reaching out to Russia, China, and guess what, Iran, to enhance its foreign military capabilities and solicit assistance, requesting defensive radars, aircraft repairs, and potentially missiles, according to internal U.S. government documents obtained by the Washington Post. And notes the requests to Moscow were made in the form of a letter meant for Russian President Vladimir Putin, and was intended to be delivered during a visit to the Russian capital by a senior aide this month. I assume it got leaked against their interests. It also notes that Maduro, according to the documents, also composed a letter to Chinese President Xi Jinping seeking to, quote, expanded military cooperation between their two countries to counter, quote, the escalation between the U.S. and Venezuela. It notes that in the letter, Maduro asked the Chinese government to expedite Chinese companies' production of radar detection systems, presumably so Venezuela could enhance its capabilities. Why would they want that? So they can detect U.S. ships, U.S. airplanes, and other assets and target them and try to destroy them. They note that it's unclear from the documents how Russia, China, and Iran responded. Now, what's really going on here, right? The CCP and Russia, in particular, they've actually been defending Venezuela against the United States since at least 2018. And most people are not telling you this. There was almost a large-scale regional war in Latin America. And really what you're seeing right now, the bombing of the drug boats, the American targeting of different assets in Venezuela, even the possible overthrow of Maduro. A lot of people are saying America's banging the drums yet again of war. That is not true. These actions are preventing a regional war that was about to take place. Venezuela and Brazil, under Lula, they were prepared to invade Guyana just north of them. If that had happened, you would have had a large-scale war. That has now been averted, at least we hope. Now look, at the time, back in 2018, let me explain what happened. Venezuela was having mass protests. The country's banana republic held its elections. Trump said they rigged it. Even Biden, under the Democrats, said that Venezuela rigged their election. And both Trump and Biden, they recognized the opposition leader as the official winner of the election there. They said that Maduro was the unofficial leader, that he was basically just a puppet, he was not the real president, and that he was actually the leader of the cartel of the Suns. That was upheld both by Democrats and Republicans, and most media are not telling you that anymore. Now look, when Trump was talking about intervening with all this happening back in 2019, his first term in office, Russia and the Chinese Communist Party deployed forces to Venezuela. They intervened militarily. They put down the uprising, they put it down, and then Russia, back in 2019, threatened the United States openly. They said that if America intervened, there would be bloodshed. And when they literally threatened to fight us over Venezuela, Trump actually backed off in his first term. That was the last you heard about it for a long time. Biden came in, they were talking about regime change. That's the real story here. Now, where are we at now, right? Well, it hasn't changed, it's continued. As things stand right now, personally, I do not think the Chinese Communist Party, Russia, or Iran are going to help Venezuela. Why is that? It's not in any of their interest. Trump is saying, hey, Iran, want to help Venezuela? Watch the skies because a B-2 might fly overhead yet again. Remember what happened last time? That's his message to them. If Russia intervenes, Trump's going to say, well, look, I'm going to help Zelensky. I tried making a deal with you. Game over. If the CCP intervenes, Trump's going to say, hey, remember those 100% tariffs? The ones we decided to not slap on you? Well, boom, I hope you don't miss your economy too much. That's going to be the narrative. Nobody's going to come and rescue Venezuela. Maduro, right now, he's on his way out, the way it's looking. We'll see how it goes regionally, but they don't have the means to defend themselves. And they don't have the external support to defend themselves either. Very easily, we could be watching the end of the Venezuelan regime under Maduro. And a bit more context under this also. Just a few months ago, Maduro and Lula in Brazil were preparing to invade Guyana. Guyana, just north of Venezuela, they found one of the world's largest oil reserves. You have a lot of different companies there, again, doing oil explorations, doing operations to actually, exploit that and get oil. It's part of the normal business of Guyana. Exxon is there from America. The CCP is involved there to an extent. And then Maduro in Venezuela claimed that Venezuela has historical ownership over it, and they were preparing to militarily invade. They were the ones who were preparing to invade. They were the ones banging the drums of war. And then Marco Rubio from the State Department went down there and told Venezuela, you do it, game over. You're going to regret it. They refused to stop, and now you have us blowing up their drug boats and talking about ground war. That's the real story with Venezuela. There was going to be a large war, and a large war has now been averted. And the CCP is not going to come and rescue them. I can almost guarantee that, based again on what they could risk if they do it. Now, look, on this point also with international conflict, Trump might actually save Christians from genocide in Nigeria. Now, look, Trump is suggesting possible U.S. intervention. And Christians there, they're facing another genocide. Horrible videos coming about. I'm not going to show you this. It's terrible stuff. You have these warlords and like little guys, again, 20 guys in a pickup truck genociding people because they can't defend themselves. You have them, if you read most media, the way they're framing it is the Arabs are killing the blacks, right? That is the way a lot of media are framing it. That's not true. It's Muslim, Islamist extremists massacring Christians. That's the real narrative. That's what's actually happening. And Trump is saying that, look, you keep doing this, it's not going to end well for the people doing it. There's horrible videos. There are people trying to escape, and you have these guys killing every man, woman, and child. You have piles of bodies. They're taking selfies with the bodies. You have one of the warlords down there who claims he's murdered 2,000 people. It is absolutely horrific, and they are killing Christians. They're killing people for their religion, and they can't defend themselves. And so Trump right now just came out and he said, look, they can't defend themselves, but we can defend them. And here's what he wrote on Truth Social. Trump said, Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. Thousands of Christians are being killed. Radical Islamists are responsible for this mass slaughter. I'm hereby making Nigeria, quote, a country of particular concern. And what does that mean? It means that some people in that country should be particularly concerned for their survival. Trump adds, quote, but that is the least of it. When Christians or any such group is slaughtered, like is happening in Nigeria, 3,100 versus 4,476 worldwide, something must be done. I'm asking Congressman Riley Moore, together with Chairman Tom Cole in the House Appropriations Committee, to immediately look into this matter and report back to me. The United States cannot stand by while such atrocities are happening in Nigeria and numerous other countries. We stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population around the world. Now, look, we're going to have to see what this actually means. Trump did suggest in follow-up posts this could mean the targeted strikes and absolute decimation of the combatants. If they want to riot again and there are 20 guys in pickup trucks with guns because you're dealing with a country where people don't have guns to defend themselves, they might end up like the Houthis, right? We might get little videos and Trump is going to say, look who I blew up today, which he tends to do for some reason. Or it could be a program offering amnesty to persecuted Christians. He's also doing that in some other places. For example, in South Africa, the white farmers are being offered amnesty in the United States because communists are jumping up and down chanting, kill, kill, kill the Boer, Burr, giving machine gun sounds and saying they're going to kill them. And the New York Times is saying they don't really mean they're going to kill them. And then they kill them. And then everybody tries to cover it up because the media is eating out of the hands of these communist regimes. And then Trump says no more and offers them amnesty. And then everybody complains about it because they suddenly are against amnesty. Obviously, that's the logic, right? Trump might do the same thing for Nigeria. Some of these Christians may get offered amnesty here. Or maybe a combination of both. Maybe he blows up the guys trying to kill these Christians and then offers the Christians amnesty. We could see one or the other, but we'll have to wait, right? Now, look, on another topic, some other stuff happening. Food stamps, well, they might get turned back on. You might have heard over the weekend, food stamps are getting shut off. Back here, what's happening in the U.S., it is possible food stamps could resume despite the ongoing government shutdown. But I'm going to say food stamps are dead, but long live food stamps because they're going to come back, but it's not going to be the same. First off, let me show you this. Trump said, our government lawyers do not think we have the legal authority to pay SNAP with certain monies we have available. And now 2 courts have issued conflicting opinions on what we can do and cannot do. I do not want Americans to go hungry just because the radical Democrats refuse to do the right thing and reopen the government. Therefore, I have instructed our lawyers to ask the court to clarify how we can legally fund SNAP as soon as possible. He says it is already delayed enough due to the Democrats keeping the government closed through the payment date. And even if we get immediate guidance, it'll be unfortunately to be delayed while states get the money out. He says, if we are given the appropriate legal direction by the court, it will be my honor to provide the funding, just like I did with military and law enforcement pay. Briefly on this, remember the government shut down right now. Democrats blocked it. They're doing different narratives. This is the reason for it. They want to have health care for everybody. What does that mean, everybody? It means citizens and non-citizens. They want to give free health care to illegal aliens. The Trump side is saying, no, you're not going to give our taxpayer dollars to illegal aliens. And so the Republicans are saying, look, this is the bill, no money for illegal aliens. Democrats say money for everybody, and then the government shut down, right? Now you have it's not just money for everybody, it's also not food for everybody. And so the Democrats are now in a rough place because they're the ones blocking it because they want so badly to give these free programs to illegal aliens. Is free healthcare to illegal aliens more important than free food for, needy Americans? I don't know. We'll have to see. But Trump says the Democrats should quit this charade where they hurt people for their own political reasons and immediately reopen the government. So what's really going on with this, right? Now look, on this point, 2 federal judges have given orders that could resume food stamp payments. Because that's what Trump is saying. Trump is saying, all I need is a government order and I'll do it. He has that, but there's some stipulations to it I'll get into. Let me show you first what just happened. The Epoch Times says that 2 federal judges on October 31st said the U.S. Department of Agriculture is legally required to use emergency funds to pay out food stamp benefits during the government shutdown. The Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program, SNAP's funding, was set to lapse on November 1st because of the government shutdown, potentially affecting the food security of more than 40 million Americans. And also a lot of people who are not Americans, by the way. It says a federal judge in Rhode Island ruled from the bench that the program must be funded using at least the contingency funds. It notes that U.S. District Judge Jack McConnell also asked for an update on progress by Monday. Likewise, a federal judge in Massachusetts gave the administration until Monday, today, to specify whether it would partially pay for SNAP benefits in November with contingency funds or fully pay for them with additional funding. What does that mean? It means it's going to take some time. Now, look, we're going to have to also see how broadly this gets carried out, because this is where it really matters. That is 2 states. The federal judges in 2 states said the federal government has to pay for SNAP. But the problem you have here, a few of them, one of them is jurisdiction. These are local jurisdictions, and it's a big question. Can a federal judge in one state issue an order that affects the entire nation? The simple answer to that is no, because the Supreme Court recently heard a case on this. Now, they've been doing it anyway. But legally, a state court, even a federal judge in one state, if they make a ruling, it does not apply to every other state. So if they make a ruling in 2 states, that stays within 2 states. Now, it's possible the Trump administration wants so badly to have this done, again, nationwide, that they might use these 2 rulings to do it nationwide and not challenge it. The question is it better for them politically to keep it off? Because you're right, during the midterm elections coming up soon, and we just had our state elections. Or is it more in their interest to open it? I don't know. We'll have to see. Another thing is anybody going to bother to appeal this? Because, again, while it's at a state level, they might try to appeal it to a higher level, because if it's at a higher level, the Supreme Court, then that might actually force the funding for this program across the entire United States. The problem is, again, the Supreme Court's going to have to look at, well, is SNAP, again, federal assistance, is that constitutional? The simple answer is no. No, it's not. Then they're going to go into the question of, well, what is the broader constitutional element of, again, forcing payments for a federal program when there's a federal shutdown, and they're going to have to look at the constitutionality of that. It might not actually get passed at the Supreme Court, so they might actually just take their losses and take it at the local level in 2 states. That's why this is so difficult. The bigger issue that I think Trump wants is he wants to try to force Democrats to sign an agreement, and if they sign an agreement, it's going to be worse for Democrats because Trump is demanding other things now. Trump's saying, okay, look, it's on all you. You're going to give me everything I want to open the government back up because we can keep it shut down forever. The big question is going to be which party looks bad because of this. Right? That's the big question. Which party takes more of the heat from the government shutdown, especially when people are losing their food stamps? And look, also on that point, Elon Musk, he just went on Joe Rogan on Snap, on the well.
And New York and California would be bankrupt without without the massive fraudulent federal payments that go to those states to pay for illegals, to create a massive financial incentive for illegals.
How would they be bankrupt because of that?
They wouldn't be able to balance their state budgets, and they can't issue currency like the Federal Reserve can.
And so their ability to balance budget is dependent upon illegals getting funding?
The scam level here is so staggering. So there are hundreds of billions of dollars of transfer payments from the federal government to the states. Those transfer payments, the states self-report what those transfer payment numbers should be. So California and New York and Illinois lie like crazy. And say that these are all legitimate payments. Well, these days that I think they're even admitting that they literally want hundreds of billions of dollars for illegals. But for a while there, they're trying to deny it. So you get these transfer payments for every government program you can possibly think of, and these are self-reported by the state. And at least historically, there was no enforcement of California, New York, Illinois, and other states when they would lie. There was no actual enforcement to say like, hey, you're lying. These payments are fraudulent. Now under the Trump administration, the Trump administration does not want to send hundreds of billions of dollars of fraudulent payments to the states. And the reason you have the standoff is because if the hundreds of billions of dollars to create a financial incentive to have this giant magnet to attract illegals from every part of Earth to these states, if that is turned off, the illegals will leave because they are no longer being paid to come to the United States and stay here.
Wow.
And then they will lose a lot of voters. The Democratic Party will lose a lot of voters.
And they would have a very difficult job if this is kicked out of reintroducing it into a new bill.
Yes.
Now, look, what's going to happen with this, is that actually the case? We don't really know. Again, that's, on Elon Musk. Now, we still haven't been given an official reason on why there was a massive program in place to facilitate illegal immigration. Was it for this reason? Again, we don't know. They're going to have to audit it and find out because we've never been told. We've never been told why they were doing that. We do know that access to programs like free healthcare for illegal aliens, though, we know it was important enough. All right, sorry about that. I'm in case you don't notice, I'm on the road right now. We're in a hotel, actually. I also got the finest coffee available within a 5-foot radius, so it's quite nice. Seymour is asking, when it comes to the U.S. and China, the U.S. has always been the great consumer. Here in the U.S., we buy stuff we don't need. You better believe it. Stuff we think we want. So much stuff we have to rent storage units to put it in. No other country does that. That is true. That is true. Americans like to buy stuff. We really do. And you're saying, Josh, what do you think will happen to the U.S. when China takes over the role of the greatest consumer? All right, so a couple points on this. So first off, it is true. America has a very big consumer culture. There's a couple ways to view this. I mentioned before, okay, this is part of how Americans view money as opposed to other countries, right? America, of course, is more of a Protestant country. And I would say if you look at different countries in the world, are we the only predominantly Protestant country? I think we might be. A lot of Europe is Christian, but they're Catholic, right? A lot of Latin America is Catholic. Most countries are not like predominantly Protestant. So I don't know how broadly that affects things, but in my interpretation, this goes back to one of the stories, right, from the Bible, where a father gives money to his 3 sons, right? He has 3 sons, and he gives money to each of them. And each of them goes out and does something different. 2 of them basically go out and try to build a life. The third one goes and buries the money in the backyard. Correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't read it in a long time, but this is what I remember the story. And then the father comes back and asks his sons, what have you done with the money I gave you? And they show, I've created businesses, I've created wealth. The third son who buried the money, the father gets angry. Him. To work as much as Americans do, okay? Let's just be honest. And so they're more likely to use their money to go on long vacations or, take some time off work and stuff like that. They tend to take longer vacations. They spend their money on, longer things like that. Whereas Americans are more likely All right, folks, we back. Sorry about that. The internet here is really not good. Anyway, I apologize for that. My point was, so Americans being again more of a predominantly Protestant country, I think the way we regard money is more in line with the Western interpretation, which is money is given to you by God for a purpose. You're supposed to spend it. You're supposed to use it. One of the main stories of this comes from the Bible, where a father gives each of his 3 sons money, basically go out in the world, prosper, do something with it. 2 of his sons go and spend it on different things, building businesses, building lives, using it. 1 son goes and buries it in the yard, basically, right? And eventually the father comes out and scolds the 3rd son for burying the yard, right? Because he says, look, you were given that money to expand it, to grow it, to do something with it. not to hoard it, not to sit on it, not to bury it. And so, I think in terms of how we regard money in the United States, we regard money as something to use. If you're given money, use it. If you're given money, build something with it. If you're given money, use it to the betterment of your society, the betterment of your family, even the betterment of yourself. Money is supposed to be used, not hoarded. And so Americans, for better or for worse, sometimes even very wealthy Americans live almost paycheck to paycheck. We tend to spend money when we have it. We tend to, we stuff you've earned by suffering in previous lives, and if you have it, you shouldn't squander it. So they literally take it and bury it in the backyard. They culturally, traditionally, will often do the thing that, again, the guy in the Bible, the son in the Bible, was scolded for doing. So what for us is considered immoral, and their culture is considered moral. They don't spend money like we do. That's not across the board, though. The other side you're dealing with in China is that a lot of people live, because, it's not like that everywhere. If you go to like Taiwan or South Korea or Japan, for example, you will find people spending money a lot more. They will literally go out and eat dinner every single night, right? So they do kind of blow their money. They have a lot more of a culture revolving around restaurants, because everybody eats out like almost every single night. The restaurants make more money, the cost of food is less, and so it's cheaper to do it, so it's more sustainable. And that's part of their culture as well. You go out to work every night with your boss, literally, like if you're in Korea, and that's like what you kind of have to do. Same thing with Japan. Culturally, you're expected to do it. Some people don't like it, right? China's a bit different, though. So in China, also because of the Chinese Communist Party, the other thing you have to understand is that they've been through like multiple democides. The government in China, the Communist Party, has killed tens of millions of Chinese people over the last few decades. They've killed them by the tens of millions. We don't even know the full numbers. Current estimates, you could say based on current numbers, Mao Zedong, on a low estimate, killed somewhere around 70 million Chinese people. You're talking famine, you're talking the Cultural Revolution, you're talking like the anti-rightist movements and stuff like that. They murdered them, they starved them, they massacred them. It was horrible. And so what is the culture of people like that? Well, if they have food, they hoard it. If they have money, they hoard it. They don't want to spend it because they've lived during times when they really needed it. And so they're afraid to spend it. Now, there's two sides. That is most of the population in China. A lot of them are like that. The exception to it are the ultra wealthy in China. And when you're watching like TikTok and YouTube and you're seeing these videos of people just throwing money around, what you're usually seeing are the sons and daughters of Chinese Communist Party officials. They blow money like crazy. But the way they spend money is more like if anybody understands like the difference between old money and new money, it's very different. Old money people, they actually, if you've been around people like that, they don't spend a lot of money. I know people like this, right? Some of my family, right? You have people who don't spend a lot of money. When they buy something, they'll buy the best thing and they won't buy a bunch of it. And that's just what they do, right? New money, they're going to go out and buy like tons of designer bags and Gucci and Prada and like it's a new money thing, right? Old money doesn't do that. New money does that. A lot of the real obsession over that stuff is mostly new money. They're going to buy like 5 designer cars and whatever else because they're flaunting it, right? To put it another way, they spend money like hillbillies who won the lottery, right? The new money in China, the Communist Party type spenders, they spend money like hillbillies who won the lottery. And that's their relation with money. So when you're watching these YouTube videos of them throwing money around, that's not most of the population. That's CCP and CCP children blowing their money on everything. So the point I'm getting to this is, Seymour asked, Josh, what do you think will happen to the U.S. when China takes over the role of the greatest consumer? They're not going to become the greatest consumer. They're already past that hump. They're already past that point. The Chinese economy from the late 90s, roughly, 98, 99, 2001 to maybe the beginning of COVID, it was like this. And now it's going like this, right? Especially during COVID because they had the lockdowns, they had the shipment lockdowns, right? International shipments were cut off. They had food problems. Again, a lot of people were told to basically save your food. The CCP started up campaigns to not flaunt eating a lot of food. They started basically clamping down on that. The CCP even had different propaganda campaigns discouraging flaunting of wealth. Why would they discourage flaunting of wealth? Because there's not as much wealth floating around. And so they've gone back to the hoarding stage. They're not going to become a large consumer like the United States. I think at best what you could see in China is that you're still going to have some people with money, but it's not going to be most of the population. Roughly 80% of the Chinese population is in extreme poverty. You're talking people making like $50, maybe a month, maybe even less than that. People whose toilet is like a hole dug in the backyard, that's like a pit, not even like a proper porta potty type thing. You're talking like extreme poverty. That's the majority of their population. And so, again, they try to paint it differently in international image, but that is not what it's like. Americans will spend money on just random enjoyment stuff even when we're poor, because that's just how we do it, right? And really, there aren't many other countries on earth that have a relationship with money like we do. That's also the reality of it. California gal, you're saying if SNAP isn't available, will this possibly help encourage more private donations to food banks, etc., and provisions by individuals, nonprofits, etc., to a point that this can change a trend away from dependence on the government? Well, you're getting on something really important because it's a difference in thinking. And I'm glad you mentioned this. So I've mentioned before that socialism is subsidized failure. You take something that should not work and you force it to work artificially. If people can't get food and you artificially give them food and tell them they don't have to work, you're going to have an entire infrastructure, an entire system, even entire cultures and generations and a work ethic that revolves and grows around that reality. Oh, I don't need to work. I'm not going to teach my kids work ethic. Oh, I don't need food. I get it for free from the government. So my local church and my local community are not going to be incentivized to help me because I don't need it. Oh, we don't need this. So no institution is going to bother filling that gap, right? When people offer solutions, when people try to say, okay, if you get rid of something, if Trump gets rid of food stamps, 40 million people are going to starve to death or rob every store because they can't afford food. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Because what they're doing is they're thinking within the boundaries of the existing framework. The reality is, when the framework changes, new systems of functioning come about. And so what was the world like before food stamps? You didn't go hungry. You did in some countries, but that was like famine, right? Typically, your family would support you, your community would support you, your church or religion would support you. Businesses, big wealthy people, they'd be more involved in philanthropy. It made them look good. It raised their profile with the masses, quote unquote. And you have to understand too, the world has changed a lot in terms of industrialization since like the 17 and 1800s. It's also the reality. The other reality is when people in need received support from institutions made to help people in need, oftentimes they were more incentivized to stand up on their own 2 feet. If you, for example, were a guy and you didn't have food for your family, and your friendly neighbor said, "Look, John, I know you're struggling. Let me help you get back on your feet." And he offers to feed your family. You typically would not live off your friend or your neighbor for the rest of your life. You would feel incentivized to improve your situation, to demonstrate gratitude. How nice of you to help me. I want to pay you back. I'm going to get back on my own 2 feet. I'm going to build something because I am grateful for what you have given me, and I want to pay you back. I want to return the kindness. I would say that traditional views on this totally changed the culture of how free handouts worked. And you were not incentivized to just, forever live off free handouts from the government. The opposite is true when it's coming from kind of a faceless governmental entity where it's just, a check in the mail every month. The reaction to that is, well, if I get a job, I'm going to lose it. I lose my safety net. I don't want to look for work because as soon as I look for work, I'm going to lose this safety net. What if I can't do it? And so people don't want to get out of it. The incentive then is to stay in it for the rest of your life. And the incentive then also is, obviously you want more of it because the quality of your life is dependent on them giving you more of it. And if you want more of it, you got to vote for it. And so it changes the entire social dynamic, the entire political dynamic, and the entire culture when you have it, when you remove gratitude from philanthropy. And so I think, again, if you understand things only within an existing framework and don't understand that things used to be different, that's why you have media saying people are going to starve to death. They don't understand that there used to be systems in place that worked better than the free handout culture. All right, everyone, that said, I'm actually on the road right now, doing quite a bit. Again, we'll be back on tomorrow, so join me then, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is philanthropy better than welfare? Let me know. That said, thank you so much for being here, and as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.